what money means to them is I'm never going to spend it. I'm never going to enjoy it. I'm just going to try to save it and end up with the biggest pile that I can.
Yeah.
And that's kind of sad. And then on the other end, there's I'm going to live for today. I'm not going to save anything. And that's kind of sad too, right? So it's like figuring out like how much is enough for you. But here's something that's important to know about a P&L, which I think does shock some people, even some people that are further along. Profit and loss does not correlate with cash. So profit and loss is an accounting statement that shows how much money that you made and how much your expenses were, which result in a number. It does not equal the amount of cash you have in your business. So cash flow is a separate thing from a profit and loss.
All right, welcome back, Little Jim Big Heart, my interview series. I'm here with a really special guest, guy that we've shared the industry and we've crossed paths many times. We've tried
Mhm.
to plan this podcast for quite some time, and we're finally doing it. So I'm here with Billy Hofacker. He's a former gym owner, and now he is in the financial space for gym owners, which I cannot tell you how important that is. And for
Yeah.
those listening, um, I would highly suggest tuning in because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of value being shared. So, Billy, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, man. I'm super pumped. I couldn't sleep last night. I always say
Yeah.
that.
Why don't you give an overview, like bird's eye view of Billy Hofacker's career and what brought us here and why people might care to listen to you?
Yeah, so I started like so many people listening. I jumped out of high school and I was like, uh-oh, I'm going nowhere. I gotta figure something out here. I was an athlete. I was gonna be in the NBA for sure. Didn't quite pan out. So I was young for like graduating class. I think I was 16 or just barely 17 when
Oh,
I graduated. Yeah, I was super young. And that was like silver lining there. I ended up in community college, and I got to really figure this out. I started getting serious. I wanted to be a physical therapist, so I got all the prerequisites, started doing that. I went for 2 years, and then a buddy of mine, we became really tight with. He was like the first guy I met that I thought was cool, but also smart. He was serious about his academics. He was dating a girl who was in medical school, and he really influenced me in a positive way. Like again, it was like cool to do really well. Totally changed my mindset. I remember he got a test back in anatomy, and he got like a 96 and I got like an 81 or 78 and I was like super pumped. He got a 96 and he went up to the professor and he said, "Hey, I just want to ask you about this one I got wrong." And I was like, "Wow, this guy is a different level." So I did like a basically did like a 180 there, got real serious about things. But then I found out about personal training, which is what he was doing. I took a break from school after the 2 years, got into that, and I've never had a real job. I've been a lifelong fitness professional, personal trainer. I did different things over the years. I was a professional martial artist for 3 years in my 20s or 3.5 years.
oh,
And yeah, and then at age let's call it late 20s, I was newly married. Well, I had a vision of family and all that stuff, the white picket fence, all that stuff. And I had this interesting thing happen. I was getting ready to head to the gym to train some clients, and I had my car repossessed, which was so crazy. I never worried about it. I never knew anything about it. I just was in total shock.
oh,
I was angry. This guy's taking my car. What is going on here? I realized that I ignored some things on the financial side. I had some issues there. So that was like part. The reason I shared that is because it was like the catalyst of what I do now. But that was a long time ago. From at that point, I actually started my first brick and mortar facility. I did it on a shoestring budget. I actually started off with a sublease. It was part of it was right place at the right time. It was kind of early on. We were talking like 2010, and it took off. It did
no
really
better
well.
time to start a gym than like 2010, 2012 when we started. That was the best
Yeah,
time.
I know, dude. I tell the funny story is I had people bringing their own equipment, and I was charging them $200 a month to work out in like a huge group. So it was like a profit machine. We had like up to 40 people, even more sometimes in a class. They're all paying $200 a month and paying the trainer like $20. I mean, it was amazing. I went from the financial struggles that you can imagine with the car position to making some real money. I ended up changing the model partly. Well, I should say partly. I would say fully because I I didn't really like it. I wanted to do more coaching. I want to do something that was a little more personalized. So I switched to the whole like small group model. So we did that. We did both. We did the whole tiered system where you did the small group, the large group, and then that was let's call it 2012 at that point. And then a couple years later, opened up a second facility in Babylon, New York. We had a good run. Things went really well with the second facility, profitable from the start. I took a lot of lessons I learned on the personal side, implemented them in the business. That went on for a while. We opened for 15 years total. And then along the way, I started doing some consulting and some coaching. At first, it was on the business side because we ran a really small footprint, high profit facility. And that ultimately turned more to the financial side, especially during COVID. During COVID, I had a
Yeah,
real epiphany of the thing I could really offer the fitness world is my experience as a gym owner, but through the lens of the finances and the story that I had. So the number side of things, when the car got repossessed, I discovered that we had $130,000 of non-mortgage debt. I had less than my net worth was super negative, really, really poor financial position. We paid that off in 5 years. And I like to say that all of that was paid off through the profits of the gym. When I say all of it, is probably like over 90% of it. We did some other little things here and there,
yeah,
and then yeah, and then kept going. And 7 years later, paid off our house and everything. And so that's like my financial side of things. Started helping fitness professionals, gym owners with their finances, and that's evolved. And then in 2025. I ended up I actually actually moved to Middle Tennessee in 2023. So I ran my gyms for 2 years from here. And then in 2025, I had an opportunity to sell, and I did. And now I'm a full-time fractional CFO, financial coach.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I don't know why I thought you lived in like Idaho or
No.
you were from New York. I thought
Yeah,
you were
Long Island,
from
New
like
York.
the Midwest
Yeah.
somewhere. Oh, good for
No,
you.
I was born and raised in Long Island, New York. I think I lost a little of the accent through doing some speaking and things like that. But my dad's
Yeah,
from Forest Hills, Queens. My mom was from Canarsie, Brooklyn, and I was born the year they moved from the city to Long Island. So I have an older brother, older sister. They were both born in Queens. I was born in Long Island, and I was there until actually interesting. I think it's interesting that I had never moved. So I was born in that house on Long Island,
wow,
and I had never moved. I actually bought the house from my parents when they retired, and 2 years ago was my first and only move of my entire life.
wow. That is pretty interesting. You don't hear that often. Um,
No,
so what do you do as a what is a fractional CFO?
yeah, so a fractional CFO helps business owners on the financial side. It helps them forecast, helps them with financial strategy, financial leadership. It helps when they're looking to grow. It helps when they're looking to make important decisions. It helps them to really maximize their money because a lot of business owners they get into it because like we all know the whole e-myth thing, right? They get into it, they're technicians, and then all of a sudden it's like, man, I started this business from my garage, and all of a sudden I have a seven-figure business. Like I don't really know the ins and outs here. I don't know the patterns. I don't know the trends. I don't know the anomalies. I don't know the red flags. I don't know what I don't know. So what I like to do on the financial side is help business owners number one get clarity over their numbers. That's the starting point. Once they get clarity, it's like we can then move from where they are, just like a personal trainer would help their client, help them go from where they are to where they want to be. So I have a gym owner who is doing great in a lot of ways, but they still feel they're really tied to the business. They're not home for dinner. They really want to set up their financials in a way that allows them to do that. I don't know, their spouse is upset because the business is getting all of the profit. They're not benefiting from that. They want to maybe go on more vacations, or they want to, I don't know, pay off their house, or so many things that they might want to do. So I kind of help them bridge the gap between where they are, where they want to be financially, using the business as a vehicle to do that, wealth building, financial freedom, all of those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, like one of the things that I personally went through, and I know a lot of gym owners, especially ones that came from like my background, your background, where we're like bootstrapped. We got to do it because we love fitness.
Yeah.
Like financial success wasn't even like on the radar of what
Hmm.
the future held. Like
Hmm.
I kind of went into this. I remember the first seminar that I went to, the promise was to build a six-figure business.
Gross
Like
revenue, right?
gross revenue. Yes, gross revenue.
Yeah. Yeah.
$10,000 a month was like,
Yeah.
holy smokes. If I could just make $10,000 a month in
Hmm.
gross revenue, I'll be I'll be set for life.
Hmm.
And now, like with the engaged locations, like we hope to be at 10,000 in the first month. And like
Hmm.
we're like, that's terrible. So
Yeah.
I think I have had, I've got money issues if I'm speaking
Hmm.
transparently. Like
That's
I've
awesome. Yeah,
always
thanks.
had financial anxiety.
Hmm.
The second I could hire somebody that I could offload, like I need you to pull open the mind body reports and review the financials. Like I had
Yeah.
serious like money anxiety. I still do. I still
Yeah.
struggle with it. Is that a part of like what
Oh,
you
yeah.
kind of,
Yeah, like I have a client I'm actually thinking about. We started very recently. She's actually in her onboarding phase. So we have like a four-part onboarding phase that we do with CFO clients, and that's like her story. So she started off, didn't have tons of money anxiety. It stems from childhood. She is willing to learn the marketing. Like, show me how to do the marketing. Show me how to get my message out there. I want to learn. I want to do that. On the financial side, it's a different story. On the financial side, I don't want to touch that. It's just too nerve-wracking. I don't get it. And I encourage people like, yeah, that's what a fractional CFO does. It basically takes that for you, so you don't have to worry about all of the details of it. But it's still your money, still your business. Or never take your hand off of the pulse completely. But you don't have to worry about the details of it. You don't have to worry. You have help making those decisions that can be paralyzing for people. So yeah, that's a huge part of it. For I would say a lot of my clients, that's a common thread is that money makes them anxious. So that's part of it is like helping them with those things. There's mindset. Money is so interesting because it doesn't mean anything at one level. It's like paper or whatever, or it's numbers on a screen. But at the end of the day, it controls so much of or consumes so much of our thoughts. So much of what we go through is like money related. It's our mindset. It's our mentality. It's how we're feeling. It's our relationships. It's the things that we do. So it's fascinating to me, all these different areas that it touches. So I would say like personally, those are things that I deal with a lot of, and I enjoy doing that. And I think it's like a gift of mine to do that. But a lot of fractional CFOs, it's not the case. It's like they're just
right?
handing you a report and they're sending, there's like these kinds of people that do that. And it's like, I've had a lot of clients where it's like, that doesn't help me because that's the whole thing I'm trying to avoid. Is like, I'm scared of these spreadsheets, right? So we try to take all of that data and turn it into real behaviors that are going to help, real world decisions that are going to help.
Yeah, and I know for me, not even for me, but in general, I imagine you get people that are either on this money psychology side. They're either
Hmm.
on the incredibly frugal side where they've made more than
Hmm.
they want to pinch every single penny. They will not reinvest, which means they usually hit a ceiling and they don't hire new people or they don't invest in
Yep.
marketing to grow.
Hmm.
And it's hard cracking the shell to be like, listen, you need to invest maybe in real estate, maybe in some wealth
Hmm.
building asset. Or the
Hmm.
other side, which I think I fall into, is money burns a hole in my pocket. The second I get it,
Hmm.
I'm like, we're doing another gym or we're doing this. And I don't
Hmm.
have the habit of like saving enough. So it always feels like and I think I'm wired to have that money scarcity. So I'm
Yeah.
like with my childhood trauma or whatever, but I think we always earn up to the level of our self worth. So when I have too much
Hmm.
money, I want to spend it because I have this need to feel like I need more.
Yeah.
So that's my own therapy session.
Nah, man, it's good. It's good awareness that you have, and I think that's the key. I don't know if you're asking me that, but it's getting curious about that. Like, yeah, what that's interesting. It's not a judgment. It doesn't make you good or bad. It's like we're all wired differently. We all have
All
different
right.
personalities and a different psychology behind it. And I agree. Some people, what money means to them is I'm never going to spend it. I'm never going to enjoy it. I'm just going to try to save it and end up with the biggest pile that I can.
Yeah.
And that's kind of sad. And then on the other end, there's I'm going to live for today. I'm not going to save anything. And that's kind of sad too, right? So it's like figuring out like how much is enough for you, how much is going to be enough for the lifestyle that you want. And we could back into that. The good news is, I know you talk a lot about systems. There are systems for that. Just like for anything else,
Yeah.
there are systems to say, okay, this is how much I'm going to reinvest. This is how much I'm going to use for personal wealth building. This is how much I'm going to use for security, depending on, what's important to you.
Well, let's start there. Like, how do
Yeah.
you, how would one come to the point of like, this is the number that I want? Is there a percentage breakdown of like, this much I need to save, this much I want for myself? Like, where do the numbers shake out?
Yeah, so like the worst answer that I have to give is it. Yes, exactly. You do it. Is it depends, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to answer it because I just want to make sure that I start with that. It completely depends because I know the listeners are at different phases. Some of them might have 20 gyms, some of them are just starting out, and like the answers are going to change based on that. I think one of the things, and you could like if this is not helpful we can move to a different part, but I think one of the things that I see, even quote unquote successful gym owners, whatever that means, right, they oftentimes neglect the importance of paying themselves. I really like for business owners, gym owners, to have a clear understanding of what I would call it their burn rate, like it's how much they need on the personal side. And there are different levels to that. There are gym owners, and you'd be surprised. Everybody thinks it's just them, but you'd be surprised how many gym owners are not paying themselves, or not doing it properly, or not doing it consistently, or not doing it with a system. That's one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, they're paying themselves really well. They're bonusing themselves with profit distributions. There's a system for all of that, and it's going toward whatever it is, the debt payoff, it's going toward wealth building, it's going toward them having a lot of fun, enjoying their life. And then there's people that are somewhere along that spectrum. As a starting point, if we could understand what is that bare bones budget, like that minimum they need to pay themselves, and want to make sure that we're doing that as soon as possible. Obviously, we don't want to stay there. I want people to be able to pay themselves what they need, plus some extra for some fun, for some travel, for some saving for a rainy day, and building future wealth. And then from there, as the business becomes more and more profitable because it's providing value in the marketplace, and the owner can that's their choice. They can benefit even more financially, and put that money toward whatever goals they have, which we could talk about, like what some goals could be.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you basically asked like for a starting point, where do they need to be? So that's one of the things I would think about. The other is thinking about any wealth building journey. There has to be a foundation in place before any of that could happen. And one part of that is the owner compensation piece. So we could kind of move on if that was clear. We could talk more about that, but that was one
Yeah. So
piece.
it's getting a
Yeah.
baseline of like, what's your burn rate, right?
Yeah.
How much do you need to spend just to get by? How much? And
Mhm.
then, so it's obviously individual. So for
Yeah.
anybody listening, like, take a lens and look at like, how much are you spending? How much do you need to spend? How much are wants versus needs?
Yeah. And here's the thing. It's really interesting. If we're honest, so I'm going to be like, I don't know, a little bit of a coach here for you listener. Think about how much do you make? Boom. Ready? I guarantee you know that answer. Ready? Let's try this one. How much do you spend?
No idea. Yeah.
It's probably going to be crickets, right? You probably don't know how much you spend, right? So that therein lies the problem, right? And I'm not saying that you have to be this miser that tracks every penny, but you have to have an idea. If you don't know what you spend, it's
Yeah.
going to be hard for you to get ahead. But you need the foundation. That's part of it. There's two other pieces of the foundation. The second piece is you read the book, was it Essentialism?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so I just read the book. He told this awesome story about the first modern explorers to hit the South Pole, and he talked about the one guy. He brought just enough, like exactly enough that I need, so no cushion. So he brought one flashlight. The other guy brought four flashlights. The first guy brought exactly enough food for his men. The other guy brought three times the amount that he needed. The first guy put like one marker down in case guys got lost so they could find their food. The other guy put like 20 markers all over the place. And what happened? What was the result? Well, the first group, they all perished.
Yeah.
Second group, they made it to the South Pole and they made it without really any trouble. And the difference was they had cushion. So that's the second piece of that foundation. So we need to have some cushion. So I want you to have 3 months of operating expenses available because I mean, the people that have been around since COVID, they know that stuff happens. It's not about if it's going to happen, it's about when it's going to happen. So you want to make sure you're protected for those times. That's personal and business. What that does is it gives you, especially if you're somebody that has a little bit of anxiety and you struggle with that kind of thing, is that gives you some peace of mind. It's like, I
Right.
know that even if I make some bad decisions, even if there are some problems in the world or in my immediate environment that we're going to be okay. That's the second piece. And the third one is high interest debt. So high interest debt will cripple your ability to achieve financial freedom. So we want to make sure that we're on a plan to get out of high interest debt as fast as possible.
Can I
And we're
ask
going to
you
stay at,
a
yeah,
clarifying question for,
yeah,
and maybe for me, but some people listening, you always hear 3 times your operating expense needs to
yeah,
be in the bank.
yep,
Is there like a bull versus bear strategy there? Because,
yeah,
for me, that sounds like a lot. Like at
yep.
Gage, that's like
Oh,
quarter
yeah,
million dollars.
yeah.
You know, like, do I really need $250,000 in
That's,
cash sitting around, or is
that's
one
good.
month like, is there like
Yeah,
a conservative versus aggressive approach to that saving
That's a
strategy?
yeah, that's really good. I would say I can give a little bit of context, but I would say just to answer it directly to start, I would say like the 1 month would be the good
Yeah.
had you word that like the conservative amount, and then 3 months would be like the maybe the excessive. I'm excessive, so but I also had lesser overhead, right? So I had at one point
Right.
when I had my gyms, I had 3 months of business operating expenses. I had 3 months of personal expenses. I also included my pay in the 3 months of business operating. So I had like, probably
Yeah.
more than I ever would have needed. So that's where it gets a little bit personal. Like, where do you feel good with? And here's the other thing, especially if you're somebody who's growth minded, like you are, Devin, and you're in growth phases, you're probably never going to get there. Like, think about it, right? Because you're constantly growing, constantly expanding, you're opening up more locations. Like it's going to be next to impossible for you to
Right.
have 3 months ongoing. But it's just the mindset of that we're working toward that. I believe even in those cases, we want to allocate a percentage of profits toward reserves so
Right.
that our business is staying healthy. So that's one way that I would combat that. But then we're going to look at how high is our risk. If you have a like I'll say a high debt to or liability to asset ratio, or a poor asset to liability ratio, however you want to look at that, then you want to have probably extra reserves, right? Because that means you might not have enough to cover yourself if something goes south. So that's a factor there. You might look at your personal lifestyle. If your personal lifestyle requires you have the Lamborghini or something like that, and it's like, man, I have a what is that? How much is a Lamborghini payment? I don't even know, right? Let's call it like two
Yeah.
thousand
Yeah.
bucks, whatever it is, right? I have obligated for that, so I need more reserves in case something happens. If you have a leaner lifestyle, lesser expenses, and maybe you're okay. Maybe you have. I'm getting a little bit more on the personal side now, but maybe you have a spouse or partner that's bringing in a salary that might change how much you
Right.
need in reserves, right? So there's lots of factors there, but I think that's a good range. Those are your three foundational components. We haven't even gotten to the fun stuff yet, right? But for
Well, so let's
starters,
just on
yeah,
that third one, you said high interest debt. What would be the cutoff for like anything above this we're looking to get rid of in terms
man,
of interest?
I know the power of compound interest. Albert Einstein said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Those who understand it earn it; those who don't pay it. And there's a lot in the news now with like the president, what he's trying to do. But the point is, it's terrible for your wealth building. So some credit cards now up to 28% interest. So if we look at the stock market over the last many years, it's averaged like 10 or 11%, depending on who you talk to. They're getting almost 30%. So they're getting triple of what you're hoping to get in your investments outside of your
Right.
business, right?
Right.
That's that is crazy. You're never going to beat that system. You're never going to get ahead. You're never going to out earn that much. I don't care how optimistic you are. It's just a plan that's destined to fail. But where is the cutoff? And in my mind, it's not that high because I think I want to free up the cash so that I can put it to to better use. It also depends because a 20-year-old, for example, I'm going to be a little bit more comfortable with some slightly higher interest debt than I would be if I was 54 years old, right? Because now
Right.
I'm nearing retirement, so that might change. But if I had to, like, again, just throw out a number, because some people like numbers, I mean, I would say anything over like 5, 6%, I'm starting to pay
Wow.
attention to. Yeah.
So
And
that's
that's
like
on that's
nothing. You can't get anything for less than five, six
yeah, I
percent
mean,
anymore.
it's really most things, right? It's what does it exclude? It excludes most, well, some mortgages, depending on when you got them,
Right.
right? It excludes some student loans, depending on where those are at, right? Those are usually like the gray area because student loans are somewhere like they're usually somewhere in that, like, okay, let's start looking at this. I mean, yeah, but most other
Kind of it.
things,
That's
yeah,
kind of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like
Because
I mean, cars are in the, I don't even know, 15s.
yeah, I hate car loans. I think that's a big thing people could look at, and I know people are going to hate me for this, but it's like because you talking about Keith Cunningham when we were talking earlier about just avoiding the dumb decisions. Car payments for most people are dumb decisions, especially the type of car payment they have.
Yeah.
If you look up like the average car payment nowadays, it's like through the roof, and all of that is your future wealth. So you are driving your future wealth and your future freedom. Now, I'm not that guy that's going to say like, don't enjoy your life, like,
You
don't have a
fun
nice
killer.
car, like drive. No, I'm not. But I want you to just sacrifice a little bit now so you can have more later. And maybe you need a car payment, right? But do you need that car payment? Because I see a lot of people, it's like, yeah, I needed a car. It's like, yeah, well, why'd you buy a car that's like 8 times nicer than my car, where I'm in a much better financial position than you? It's because they didn't want to just delay that a little bit, where they'd be so much better off if they were to do that.
Yeah. That is really helpful. I mean, I know Dave Ramsey, I think Jeff, who works with me for a long time, Dave Ramsey's program completely changed his life. I mean, they're
Hmm.
very like to the penny, Dave Ramsey. I have
Hmm.
not gone that route to that
Hmm.
extent, but it's been really beneficial. I think for a lot of trainers, that
Hmm.
approach is a game changer. Like
Hmm.
you're just not going to make enough, enough money to ever not need to be diligent on the Dave Ramsey thing if you want to buy a house and go on
Yeah.
vacations and stuff like that. Where's your approach with that level of scrutiny?
Yeah, I think it also comes down to like personality style. It's not going to work for everybody. Some people do really well with programs like that. Some people don't. That's the benefit of it's kind of like saying to a coach like I don't know what's the newest thing now, like well, not that Dave's stuff is new, but like, hey, what do you think of like this particular plan? It's like,
Right,
well, it's like the thing that you do, the thing that you follow is probably going to do really well
right.
for you. But I think in general, those principles are really solid for people that are especially early on in their journey, like we're looking to pay down some debt. Yeah, you want to get really lasered in, get really focused, really want to track what you're spending, because early on in life, in your working career, but also in your financial journey, that's the lever that's going to make the biggest difference. But once you
Yeah.
get further along, you're a gym owner, you're bringing in more money, then there's bigger levers to pull, and so there you want to kind of expand from there, look at some other things.
Cool. So you got those three levers. What's next? What do you see most gym owners like struggle with, or is like the big thing that you look for when you're diving into somebody's books?
Yes. Well, you just hit it right there with saying like diving into their books because most most of them, unfortunately, they don't really have a good feel for their numbers. I've seen some crazy things. I've seen seven-figure businesses that are not don't even have bookkeeping or don't even have anything resembling solid bookkeeping. Man, they don't know their numbers. So yeah, I would say yeah, having a feel for what's happened in the past. That would be like looking at your financial statements and understanding how to read a financial statement, understanding what it's telling you. That's a huge thing. A huge thing. They're also not. Um, they're not always the most efficient at figuring out what's ahead. So that's like the opposite of that, right? So now it's like,
Like
okay, well, this is this,
forecasting.
yeah, like forecasting exactly. So yeah, So making sure that they do that, those are good things on the business side. Yeah, looking at their allocations, like how much is going toward payroll, how much is going towards operating, how much is going towards the owner benefit. Taxes is a huge one, right? So there's so many things here on the business side. And on the personal side, yeah, it might just depend on what that next goal is. Once they have those basics covered, then we want to look at how can we build wealth outside of the business, which I am a fan of. I think a lot of people potentially another mistake, and again, I know it's a blanket statement and not everybody would agree with that, but I don't want your gym to be a retirement plan. If it helps, that's great, but let's create something outside of that.
So, this is a little aside, but I never forget. And I was in this camp, one of my first fitness events, business events ever. The guy stood up there and he was like, how many of you guys like review your finances? And everyone's hand went up. And he was like, how many of you guys review your P&Ls? And everyone was like looked around the room and everyone's hands slowly went down. I didn't even know what a P&L was
Uh,
about a year or two into business. I remember asking somebody like, what is the N like in
yeah,
P&L? Like
yeah.
that's how ignorant I was in this stuff.
Maybe we should talk about that real quick with just because that might
Yeah,
not be as uncommon as you think. So let's go over that real quick. So what is a P&L? A P&L is a profit and loss statement. It is also known as an income statement. And the important things to know about a P&L or an income statement is that it is showing your business over a period of time. What I mean by that is we're looking at a period. We're looking at last month, last quarter, or last year. It's a period of time. It usually will say something like for the period beginning X and ending X. It's showing the overall financial performance of the business. It is showing your top line. There's the term people say like, "What's your top line?" That is your gross sales. In some industries, there's more of what's called cost of goods sold. That would be sort of next. And then the difference there would be your gross profit. A lot of gyms don't have to worry about that because their COGS, they're called,
right.
are so small, or
If you sell
they're ne
apparel or supplements
yeah,
or something like that,
exactly.
yeah.
Yep. And then from there, you have all of your expenses, and those are broken down into categories. We know there's fixed and variable expenses, and they're based on a chart of accounts, which is set up in your accounting system generally. And then from there, you go all the way down, and you look at the bottom, and usually there's like two lines, and underneath it, there's your net or your loss, profit or loss, right? That's why it's called a P&L, a profit or loss. If that number is positive, you have made money. If that number is negative, you have lost money. But here's something that's important to know about a P&L, which I think does shock some people, even some people that are further along. Profit and loss does not correlate with cash. So profit and loss is an accounting statement that shows how much money that you made and how much your expenses were, which result in a number. It does not equal the amount of cash you have in your business. So cash flow is a separate thing from a profit and loss. Are there things about both that affect each other? 100%. Absolutely. I'd be lying if I tell you they weren't. But you cannot look at your P&L to determine how much cash you have, and you cannot look at your cash to determine what your P&L looks like. So that's your P&L, your income
So
statement.
explain that because this took me a long time to figure out. Like there were times where I'm calling my guy and I'm like, dude, where the fuck is the money? Like we made 20 grand last month. Where the fuck is
Yeah,
the
where is
cash?
it? Yeah. Yeah,
What
that's
depletes from your profit in your cash?
yeah, that is super common. So one thing I'll say before I answer that is that it is extremely important because you asked before about like some of the steps people should take, and I said it depends. And this is my philosophy, but here's the thing. My philosophy is right. That's the thing I want you to know. And that is that your personal finances and your business finances should be completely separated. I do not want you. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to become a professional. So professionals separate their personal and their business finances. Amateurs commingle them. Sometimes they don't even have the right accounts. I want you to be a professional. I promise you, if you take nothing away from this interview other than treating your finances like with the professionalism that they need, and part of that is separating the business and the personal 100%. So you buy nothing for your personal life from your business account, and you buy nothing for your personal life, as if I said that right, but vice versa. That will make a huge difference in your life. If you're getting away with a couple of bucks
So
here and there,
you're not a fan of just writing everything off on the business that you buy
I'm not,
personally.
and there's two big reasons for that. There's three big reasons for that. Okay, you ready for them? Number one, you will go to
Legal.
jail. Okay. Yeah. And I do not want you to go to jail because very bad things happen in jail. I have not been to jail, but I know that it's not a good place to be. That's number one. And it will happen. Trust me, you're going to get locked up forever if you put a piece of gum on your business P&L. No, I'm kidding. The second one is that you will do better financially if you separate them. And the reason being is because your identity will change into the professional that you are, and you will also have more clarity, have better organization, and make better decisions because I know this from experience. That's number two. I have no clients that are successful financially that commingle their finances. The ones that by far and away, the ones that are doing the best are the ones that separate them. And that's true for all business. And you might get away with it. It might feel like you're making some progress for now. I promise you, in the long run, you'll be better off. And number three is you don't think about the long term. Here's what happens. You run your business for 10 years. I'm just making up numbers, right? Your business is making six figures in profit after you pay yourself. But because you take $30,000 of personal expenses through your business, you risked getting locked up for 10 years. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Maybe you slept at night, maybe you didn't. You also ended up losing a lot of money because of lack of clarity. And now you go to sell your business and you say, I have $100,000 in profit. And they say, no, you don't. And you say, yeah. You say, this is all personal stuff. And you know what they say? They say, goodbye. Because a buyer wants to see clean financials. I've talked to enough people that have sold their businesses and sold their facilities. It's one of the number one things buyers look at is clean financials. And I know the argument is I keep separate track and I do this and I do that. Keep your finances clean is my
Well,
advice.
wouldn't that, I mean, I know they do some kind of like forensic. Listen, this is not my area of expertise. This may
Yeah.
be a dumb question. I know that a lot of times they'll do like a forensic accounting and they'll pull that out. I mean, wouldn't that show a much higher profitability if you pull out your personal expenses and you're like, hey, we would have profited a quarter million, but I put 150,000 of my personal stuff on the business, so it only showed 100. But if a new buyer, you're going to be profiting a quarter million dollars.
It's a good question, but what happens is when the financials are not clean, it's a red flag for them because they have to now like dig into it. And is that really what he's saying? You are going to have you're going to sell your business for so much more if the financials are clean and you don't have to do that.
And so I know that, listen, I have a lot of friends that would go to bat to disagree with you. I stand
Yeah.
more on I've never been one to like put all my personal stuff or do a ton of write-offs.
Hmm.
How do you defend your stance against somebody that would tell you like it's not that big a deal or like these are business expenses because I am operating the business? Like
Yeah.
if you had to stake, obviously the jail thing is a big
Yeah. I would say number
is a
one,
great
like
way to defend yourself. But
I would say number one, like personal
I
values.
don't know any gym owners that have gone to jail for it. Maybe you
Yep.
do, but I think that would be the argument for somebody that puts more stuff as a write-off.
Yeah, I'll say the arguments would be like from a value standpoint, like I just sleep better at night knowing I'm doing things the right way. That goes a long way. That goes further than people think. All of the people that it sounds good, like yeah, I have like separate records and this and that, but it never works out. Nine times out of ten, the people that are doing that are just a mess in so many other ways because they're missing other things. They're not organized. There's no clarity, so they're not actually getting ahead, even though they believe they are. And I think that I would ask like, how's that going? Like most of the people that are doing that, they're not
I think they're
experiencing
pretty
financial.
happy. I think that a
Well,
lot
if
of them
that's
are
the
happy
yeah,
because they're
well,
like, I don't have
if
to pay
that's
for
the
anything.
if that's the case, then obviously you have to do what you have to do and make your own choice. But I would say if you're really trying to achieve financial
Yeah,
freedom, you're going to have to do things the right way because it's going to catch up with you one way or the other. You're trying to avoid your taxes, but there's only one way to avoid taxes, and that is either by breaking the law or you're not profitable, right? And if you're not profitable, there has to be records of that money being spent.
right.
And that means that the money did get spent. That means there's no profit. If there's no profit, what else is there none of? There's no money. If there's no money, there's no wealth building. If there's no wealth building, then there's no freedom. And that's like what a lot of people want is that freedom. And if everything is getting expensed, then that's not possible, right? Because you need
Right.
money to create wealth.
Fair. Let's go back to, we talked about profit does not equal cash. Explain how that works. Like,
Yeah.
if you're profiting and you're like, this money is void of all the expenses, where is the cash? Where does it go?
So yeah, so some gym owners have big loans, and loans. It's important to people to understand that. Again, maybe something else somebody will argue with me on, and they'll be wrong about that as well. And that is that the big loan payments are paid with after-tax profit. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize, especially when they're taking loans. So you're borrowing $100,000 to start your facility. That money has to get paid back with profit. So if your business is not able to break even, you don't have enough to cover that loan. And then that's how you start to become upside down. That's how you can go bankrupt. So one of the ways that you burn through cash is with big loan payments because your business was, I'm just getting simple numbers. The business made $3,000 profit, but you had a $5,000 loan payment. You just are now negative $2,000 cash,
So
right?
basically, the
S-
loan payments don't show up in the P&L as an expense.
They
So
show up on your,
whatever,
yep,
yeah,
yeah,
whatever payments you're making don't show up in the P&L. They show, so you're showing profit, but really you're showing up. And I guess that would show up in a balance sheet, right?
correct. Yeah, yeah. So a loan payment is a balance sheet transaction, which is also important to understand about the balance. That's another thing you talked about before. What are some of the mistakes? Is also not having their balance sheet done properly. And what that does, again, from a wealth building standpoint, from a sell the business one day standpoint, same thing. If you're going to go into your business sale and say, "Oh, the balance sheet is wrong because this should have been there," but they're going to run from that. They want to see that things are done properly, dialed in. So make sure that you're looking at your balance sheet and basically what it says on there is the reality. So if it says you have a $75,000 loan, look at your loan statement and make sure that you have a $75,000 loan. If it says that you took X distribution, like that's what should have actually happened. You want to make sure that the numbers are being recorded properly. If you have balance sheet transactions on your P&L and P&L transactions on your balance sheet, it's going to throw everything off kilter. You're not looking at reality. So another response to the question of like the pushback is it's harder to make decisions if we don't know exactly what's happening. And yeah, is it possible there's a small percentage of people that are keeping like separate records of everything and can really understand it? More times than not, I've seen the opposite. I've seen them think they're doing that, but they're not actually making the progress that they want. Um, the other thing about cash, big one for gym owners is owner distributions. So owner distributions are not P&L transactions; they're also balance sheet transactions. So big problem for cash deficits in all small business is the owner requiring too much money and the business can't handle it. Right?
Right.
Same situation, right? The business made. Let's try to do this math. They made $10,000 profit, right? There was a $5,000 loan, but the gym owner took out 10,000, right? So now again we have a deficit.
-5,
So
yeah.
yeah, so that's why we want to track all of that. So we want to look at the P&L, we want to look at the balance sheet, we also want to track our cash, and we also want to forecast our cash. We're looking at all of these things over the next, let's say, 13 weeks.
Yeah. So talk about forecasting. They say forecasting is one of the hardest things to do when it comes to like growing a business. Why is forecasting so difficult, specifically in a fitness business?
Yeah, it's difficult because partly not understanding the past, right? That's why everything kind of flows together. If you don't have P&L done properly, if you don't understand the difference between P&L transaction and a balance sheet transaction, it's going to be very hard to do a forecast. Then the other piece is we can't, it's hard to predict the future. That's why it takes practice. It's a skill like anything else. But I would encourage like everybody listening. Obviously, you have options to get help. There's people out there who can help with your bookkeeping, that can help with your financial stuff. But think of it like an important skill, just like all the other
Yeah.
pieces, right? We want to make sure we're getting better at marketing. We want to make sure that we're getting better at team development and team leadership. And we also want to make sure that we're getting better on the financial side. So the first time you do a forecast, you might be way off. But it's like telling a client, like, what happens if I tried to do this exercise and I couldn't really do it? It's like, yeah, that's how it works. Like you learn it, you
Yeah.
develop a skill over time, you get better at it.
So with let me give context into kind of the granular level that I've had to learn with forecasting and that I've talked about in some talks is the difference between reality and the way you hope things to be. So like
Hmm.
a lot of people that I talk to, they're like, yeah, like their last, let's say, year, their retention was like 94%. and they're
Yeah.
forecasting at like, well, the industry average is 97%. So like we're forecasting for like 97% retention going forward.
Yeah, definitely.
And but it's like you can't guarantee, the only thing you can guarantee is what has been proven as your historical track record. So
Yeah.
you've got to forecast with that information versus, well, the standard industry rate is this. Same thing with like lead conversion. They're like, oh, well,
Yeah.
standard industry lead conversion is like 20%. So we're going to get this many leads and we're going to convert 20. But it's like, well, what have you done? In the last
Yeah.
year, you were at like 5%. So the only thing you can forecast is a continuation of what historically you've done until history proves otherwise.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would just add that I prefer forecasting conservatively. I want you to forecast on numbers that like are super conservative,
Yeah,
and you could do different scenarios, right? You could say this is what happens if this happens. That's the whole point of forecasting, right? Is to look at different scenarios and say what happens if we make this higher, but then it doesn't go as well as we think. Then this is where we'll be. Again, we talked about in a different conversation of not making decisions that you're not willing to deal with the potential negative outcomes, and forecasting helps you do that. And there was one other point I had on forecasting, which is you can look at trend lines. It's kind of like what you're saying, but just like a specific way to do that is right now we're recording this in January of 2026. We could look at what we did in January of 2025, and we could say, okay, we did X and a year to date, and then we could look at, okay, what do we do like the 2 months prior? Okay, we did X, we did Y, and then boom, and then what did we do this past 2 months prior, right? So you're basically just looking at like a 3 month trend year over year, and not always, because there's always going to be like outside
right.
factors that are different, right? But it's a way for you to say, man, I'm like on average, like up 20%, like month over month for the last like 2 or 3 months. So I can reasonably assume that that's going to happen again this month. And then you factor that in with the things that you know. Yeah, that's true, but we also didn't have this like big payroll last year, so that's going to bring our profit down. And we also I need to take a bigger distribution because I had to like redo my I had to get like I don't know, like a AC unit or something, and that changes things. And
Cool. So let's kind of put a bow on this and wrap
yeah.
this. If somebody's listening, what are some triggers that you would encourage them, if they exist, or things that they're seeing in their business that they might want to reach out to a person like you? Because some people might just think things are going well, but what are some things that, hey, if you're not doing X or if you don't have X in reserve, you should really consider talking to me?
Well, one thing is the whole lead thing, like it's such a common thing, and I'm sure you've seen this a lot. Like I just need five more like leads or five more clients. If
Yeah.
you've been at that point, you've said that multiple times, and you just think like 5 or 10 more clients are going to solve your financial issues, but
And
then
out
they
market a
don't.
broken model. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So you want to. That's a sign right there. It's a sign, and there's different levels of financial support, right? If you have, yeah, I'll try to create some buckets. Okay, you're somebody that has no idea about what happened. You don't know what happened last month. You don't know what happened last year. You don't know what your profit was. You don't know what your cash was. Then you need a bookkeeper, right? So that's your action step, right? You will not become successful in business without having solid books. I mean, I'll fight anybody on all of these things, but especially like that's one that
Yeah.
I'm not, no way, right? It's not going to happen, right? It's like saying like I'm going to go visit Devin in Philadelphia, but I have no idea where I'm starting from. Like, there's no way it's going to
Right.
happen. Second one would be somebody who, let's say, like maybe like a little bit of the other extreme, somebody who has a bunch of money coming in, but they just don't feel like it's actually getting them anywhere. Like they feel like they are building their business, but they're not really building anything around it. Like they're not benefiting from it. Like they're not making more money. They're not improving their financial picture or position. It's like, how can I maximize the dollars that are coming through my hands? And then maybe a third one would be somebody who just needs support with like the systems. Like they're like, I don't have a plan for my taxes. I just kind of figure it out end of the year. My accountant tells me what I owe. I try to piece it together. By the way, again, go back to the other point. If you don't owe any taxes, it's probably not a good thing. I'll just say that. And that's
Yeah.
something else. I know it's like it's going to be controversial, but I just don't see it. But if you're in one or two scenarios, right? You're not paying taxes, which means your business isn't profitable, which means you need help, or you owe a ton of taxes, but you don't have a system for that. You also need help, right? Because you want to reduce that stress, but also other things, right? You don't have a plan for debt payoff or anything to grow your business, right? Business growth, reserves, like you talked about, those kinds of things.
All right, cool. Well, listen, man, if anybody wants to reach out to you or work with you potentially, what would be the best way for them to do that?
I would say just start a conversation and let me know what you have going on. I know, I sound a little extreme in my views, but I will say this when I talk to you, that's not the case. Like, I just want to find out what you have going on. I just want to listen to, what your deal is and then see from there, like what some next steps could be for you. So if that's you, reach out and we'll have a conversation. You can find me on social media, Billy Hofacker is probably the simplest way. Or you can just connect with me and like kind of you could like stalk me a little bit and like listen to some of the content and then say, yeah, like I want to reach out.
Yeah, because you have a podcast yourself. I was just a guest on it. What's a podcast that they could tune into?
Yeah, yeah, it's called Your Fitness Money Coach.
Your Fitness Money Coach, YFMC
Yep.
podcast. Awesome,
Boom.
man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it and talk soon.
Thank you, brother.